Labour waits to hear how the leader's top team might change after the local elections in England. Sir Keir Starmer is under pressure to come up with a fresh focus after some disappointing results. But sacking his deputy Angela Rayner from a key role sees him accused of trying to shift the blame.
That's what you do in leadership. You take responsibility. You don't scapegoat and blame others. You take it on the chin.
They're hard calls, but it's for Keir to choose the team he wants and get people in the positions that he wants us to be in.
Also on the programme after the Scottish Parliament results, the prospects for another independence referendum. Nicola Sturgeon says she'll put the post-pandemic recovery first, but there is a mandate for another vote. Permission to hug. England looks set to progress with lockdown easing, with an announcement due tomorrow. A second night of violence in Jerusalem as Palestinians continue to protest against evictions. And United beat Aston Villa to keep Premier League title celebrations in the blue half of Manchester on hold. Good afternoon. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is in the process of making changes to his top leadership team in the wake of results from the English local elections, sacking Angela Rayner from her campaigning roles for the party. She remains its deputy leader. Sir Keir is expected to announce a reshuffle after a series of disappointing results from English councils and the loss of the Hartlepool constituency to the Conservatives. But he's been accused of trying to shift the blame for the results. Our political editor, Laura Koonsberg, has the latest.
Morning, Mr Starmer.
Tense and tight-lipped.
Is removing Angela Rayner as party chair you taking responsibility?
No day of rest this Sunday.
Is this the first of many changes, Mr Starmer?
After some awful election results, Keir Starmer's edged out his deputy Angela Rayner as party chair, sparking a messy dispute. Was she sacked or offered a different job? With no clarity from the leaders' team. Some Labour MPs around the country are baffled and angry.
We need to know that this is an individual that has a game plan for taking us forward. And at the moment, that isn't clear. So I think he needs to up his game.
For Labour here,
shadow ministers hanging by the phone to find out about their job.
Leaders do make those decisions. They're hard calls, but it's for Keir to choose the team he wants and get people in the positions that he wants us to be in.
And others demanding much faster change.
We can't just saunter our way back into power. We have to show the country that we get the message that we were told and act absolutely decisively.
Labour took a hammering in many areas they used to treat as their own, losing Durham Council for the first time in 100 years. But there were good results in Wales, some celebration with progress in West Sussex, even areas like Oxfordshire. But there seems to be bitterness, not disaffection, at the party's top level. Instead of making Tories miserable, Labour today has been clouded by this spat, the opening move of a reshuffle that's gone wrong.
What public relations genius just thought this was a good move on the very day, actually, we were having successes?
Instead of strengthening their grip and power up in the leader's office, Keir Starmer's team has been holed up for hours and hours, stuck over what to do, rather than making calls to announce the new and they hope improved shadow team.
These elections were the first for Labour, with Keir Starmer in charge, and the first since the party received a drubbing in 2019. There were some pockets of progress, but overall the picture was still tough. So this shuffling and shifting of his top team was meant to be part of an effort to show he can change, and he's decisive and determined that the party can punch their way out of the slump. But instead, it's been a day for Labour of delay and dispute.
When what voters see is political parties scrapping with each other, the temptation can be just to turn away and block out the noise.
And we can join Laura live now for the latest. So some big questions for Labour, Laura. How do you see this playing out?
Well, there are some really big questions. Most straightforwardly right now, what exactly is going on? The lights are still on in Keir Starmer's leader's office up there, but there's still no news about this reshuffle that was meant to happen today. No names, no confirmed moves about exactly how his top team is going to look. Still no clarity in exactly what happens with this dispute with his deputy, Angela Rayner. And you might wonder why that fuss really matters at all. Well, look, Labour had a hard time this week at those elections, even though they've got a new leader who's made a huge effort to show how much he wants to change the Labour Party. So this few days, this moment should have been a really clear chance for him to have a reset, to grab the party by the scruff of its neck, to get on with the changes that he wants to make, even if that makes some very difficult decisions. But instead of that, he's found himself in this pretty confused picture, perhaps a standoff with his deputy, no clear message about even who's going to be sitting around the shadow cabinet table in the next few days. And it's also provided a vacuum into which his critics, particularly from the left of the party, have spent the whole day touring the broadcast studios, chucking in their tuppence worth and suggesting that he is taking the party in the wrong direction. The party hopes to be able to give the details of the top team tonight, but it's already been a long old day. There's not much clarity about what's really going on.
Laura Koonsberg, thank you. Nicola Sturgeon has told Boris Johnson it is a matter of when, not if, the Scottish people get a chance to choose if they want independence. She made the comments in a phone call to the Prime Minister this afternoon. The Cabinet Office Minister Michael Gove says that the First Minister should focus on economic recovery from the pandemic. She says she will do that, but that there is a clear mandate for another vote with a majority in the Scottish Parliament for pro-independence parties. Here's our Scotland editor, Sarah Smith.
Nicola Sturgeon congratulating some of her brand new MSPs who'll bolster the increased pro-independence majority in the next Scottish Parliament. Confident she has a strong electoral mandate for an independence referendum, she still might, eventually, face the hurdle of a legal challenge from the UK government. Will you see them in court if you have to have a referendum?
Well, I think we should probably just all respect democracy, and the SNP's won the election on a commitment for a referendum when we're through the crisis. We've won that election overwhelmingly, and I think in any normal democracy that would be respected.
For now, she's clear her priority is dealing with the pandemic, and she's agreed to meet the Prime Minister for a COVID summit. Nicola Sturgeon clearly doesn't intend to take any steps towards another referendum in the near future. Eventually, though, she does plan to pass legislation through the Scottish Parliament to authorise another vote on independence. If the UK government want to stop that from happening, they may have to challenge in court whether the Scottish Parliament has the legal authority to authorise that referendum. The UK minister charged with keeping the kingdom united is in Scotland, swerving questions on a legal challenge to any referendum.
The priority at the moment is not court cases, it's not independence legislation, it is recovery from the pandemic. And to be fair to the First Minister, to be fair to Nicola Sturgeon, during the course of this election campaign, she said that was the single most important thing that we should all be concentrating on. And we should work together as Team UK in order to deal with the pandemic.
Is Scotland allowed to leave the UK?
Of course it is.
It is?
Yes.
So how?
Well, through a legal referendum, which would allow people to make that choice.
Votes cast on Thursday appear to show that voters in Scotland are split roughly 50-50 on the question of independence. Anyone eager for another referendum will find they have to be patient. This election result makes it more likely, but not imminent.
I would like it to happen soon, but I'm prepared to wait a few more years.
It's changed since 2014. Everything's changed, obviously, with the EU, with us being taken out of the EU. So I'd like to see another independence referendum, personally. I think that people have voted for that.
Maybe it's a case of hanging on, you know, get ourselves sorted, and then when we're in a good place economically, financially, sociologically, all of that kind of stuff, then yeah. But right now, we're in the pandemic, no.
On that, there's widespread agreement. No referendum during a COVID crisis. But in the months and years to come, a political and possibly legal battle over the future of the United Kingdom is looming. Sarah Smith, BBC News, Edinburgh.
Hugging is likely to be officially allowed in England again when the government makes an announcement tomorrow on the next lockdown easing from May the 17th. The changes on household mixing will be the most significant since the rules were introduced last year. But we're being urged to use common sense and limit close contact. Here's our science editor, David Shookman.
Remember this, the comfort of a hug? Well, for more than a year we've been warned against it because of the risks of transmitting the virus. But now, with fewer infections and many more people vaccinated, it seems to be the moment for a cautious return.
We've seen an absolutely extraordinary success of both the vaccine programme and also the suppression of cases as a result of this very prolonged lockdown we've had. And so I think it is time to start, based on the very careful modelling that's been done, to start relaxing some of those restrictions.
So will people rush to hug again, or might they hold back? In Newcastle this afternoon, we found a range of views.
It's brilliant. Yeah, really looking forward to it. I couldn't help but want to hug my friends here at the table.
I've never been a big hugger myself. People know that about me, so I think it won't change much.
I will be cautious, but I really am looking forward to hugging the parents and the in-laws and stuff that we haven't done for a long time, and they need it as well, so yeah, it'll be really nice.
The Prime Minister is reported as saying that we need to use our common sense when it comes to hugging. So what exactly does that mean? Well, an infected person can release the virus through their breath. So here's the scientific advice. Limit the number of people you hug, just those who mean most to you, not everyone you meet. Keep it short. That'll reduce the chances of the virus being passed on, and try to avoid being directly face to face. In any event, scientists say a lot depends on exactly who it is you're hugging.
If you are hugging a grandparent, hugging a grandchild, and the grandparents are fully vaccinated, that's probably quite a low risk activity most of the time. But it would worry me if we were advocating we can hug all of our friends every time we meet them again, because I think that's going to perpetuate an awful lot of additional close contact that could still spread the virus.
The pandemic has meant new ways of behaving, elbow bumps, for example. But while life in the UK is now set to become a bit more normal, it's far too early for that in much of the rest of the world. David Schuckman, BBC News.
And the latest figures show there were 1,770 new COVID infections in the past 24 hours, with 2 more deaths recorded. More than 35 million people have now had their first dose of a vaccine. That's over 2/3 of the UK's adult population. More than 17.5 million people have had both jabs, meaning over 1/3 of all adults are now fully vaccinated. In Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has defended the actions of police after a second night of violence in and around Jerusalem's Old City. Tensions have been high, with Palestinians protesting at planned evictions from homes in East Jerusalem. Last night's violence came after thousands had prayed at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound on the most holy night of Ramadan. Our Middle East correspondent Yolande Nell reports.
On the most sacred night of Ramadan, this is how prayers ended, with Israeli police using stun grenades, Palestinians throwing stones in Jerusalem's Old City. Today, Israel's Prime Minister blamed extremists.
We will enforce law and order decisively and responsibly. We will continue to ensure freedom of worship to all religions, but will not allow violent unrest.
It followed some of the worst violence in years on Friday, with clashes right by the Al-Aqsa Mosque, bringing international condemnation. Tensions have been running high for weeks, with nightly clashes in the East Jerusalem neighbourhood of Sheikh Jarrah. Palestinian families here are locked in a long-running legal battle to stop Jewish settlers taking over their homes. It's become a rallying point for Palestinians, with the militant group Hamas warning Israel it's ready to act. Despite delays in that case, this week looks set to remain volatile. It's now Jerusalem Day, when Israel celebrates gaining control over the city.
They have a flag march which comes through the Damascus Gate, waving Israeli flags, far-right nationalist Israelis. That's always seen as a provocation, and there's fears that could lead to yet more violence.
And what happens here matters. Jerusalem is always at the heart of the Israel-Palestinian conflict. Yolande Nell, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Rail disruption is continuing for a second day after services were cancelled across the UK due to cracks in some trains. 183 Hitachi trains were taken out of service as a precautionary measure after the fault was found. Katie Austin is at King's Cross Station for us now. What can you tell us, Katie?
Well, there are still some cancellations on LNER services this afternoon, and disruption is likely to spill over into tomorrow. But Great Western Railway is the network worst affected. It's got more than 90 of these trains, and it was only able to run about a tenth of its long-distance services today. It's asking passengers not to travel tomorrow either, and we don't know how many days it'll take really before disruption comes to an end. We still don't know either how many of these trains are going to need repairs, but the government has said this afternoon it's asked Hitachi to set out a longer-term strategy for repairs.
Katie, thank you very much. Time now for the sport. Let's join Ollie Foster at the BBC Sports Centre. Hello, Ollie.
Thank you, Mishal. The Premier League title race is still alive. Just defeat for Manchester United at Aston Villa would have seen Manchester City crowned champions, but United came from behind to win 3-1. Here's our sports correspondent Joe Wilson.
Manchester City waited for the title, but when, and indeed where? Well, let's visit Birmingham. Where's Bertrand Traoré going? He knew.
And scores!
Aston Villa winning, and for title significance, it was Manchester United losing. And so step forward Bruno Fernandes, the way he steps forward.
He was ice cool from the spot.
3 minutes later, the turn.
It's Greenwood on the turn this time.
Make a race, or rather, at least, it waits for another day. Joe Wilson, BBC News.
Chelsea have won the Women's Super League on the final day of the season. The reigning champions had to beat Reading. They won 5-0. Frank Kirby scored twice. They finished 2 points clear of Manchester City. Chelsea have won the League Cup this season, are still in the FA Cup, and they've also reached the Champions League final. St Johnstone are into the Scottish Cup final. They beat St Mirren 2-1. They'll return to Hampden Park later this month to face Hibernian. Substitute Glenn Middleton scored what proved to be the winner from a free kick. St Johnstone are on for a cup double, having already won the League Cup. Lewis Hamilton converted the 100th Formula One pole position of his career into another victory. Won the Spanish Grand Prix to stretch his lead in the championship to 14 points. Ben Croucher reports.
A winner for the 98th time in F1, Lewis Hamilton has become the master of making the extraordinary look oh so simple. In Spain, this was a lesson in patience, in picking the time to strike. His main rival, Max Verstappen, had his chance right at the start, elbows out into turn one. No way through for Hamilton. For lap after lap, he hounded the Dutchman to no avail. So instead, his team decided to switch things up. A set of fresh tyres, and the chase was on.
How far have I got to catch up? Currently 22 seconds. We've done it before.
And 22 laps too. And in the Red Bull corner?
I don't see how we're going to make it to the end.
He was right, as the defending champion timed his attack with 6 laps to go and into the lead for good. Hamilton and his team in perfect harmony.
To all the men and women in this team, man, you guys just continue to impress me. Thank you so much for the hard work.
Ben Croucher, BBC News.
There is, of course, much more on the BBC Sport website, but that's all for now. Michelle.
Ollie, thank you very much. And that's it from us. I'll be back with the late news at 10 on BBC One. Time now for the news, wherever you are. Goodbye.